with your friend, the police will be there saying, you know, what are you doing? So I think that you see, the more petty something is, the more the police are interested. And a real shift of the forces of law and order to behaviour policing, you know, away from a relatively useful public service to behaviour policing. And you see a similar shift in the NHS and all the other public services. So the NHS, you go in for a sports injury, they want to know about your sex life, your smoking, your drinking. There's been a shift from treating illnesses to behaviour modification. I was in hospital recently for a relatively serious operation. I was asked my alcohol consumption 3 times a day, and in the organ of concern, there was nothing to do with my liver. You know, it's really, you go in for something and they want to know about your life. There's a government programme to get people to take the stairs at work, to get children to walk to school. One NHS-funded project involves swipe cards for kids to swipe the lampposts on the way to school to prove that they'd walked to school. So really the whole emphasis of health service is not dealing with health problems, but intervening with behaviour. And doctors are more and more fascinated with that and less and less interested by the fact you've got a broken leg. So I think that this involves a fundamental shift in what the state is and what the state does, from at least a pretense of serving the public, of being public servants, of delivering a good that you could use, to really the state as a subjective agent. So if the state acts on us, it changes our behaviour. Government ministers talk about acting on public attitudes. So the state is the subject, and rather than it representing us, we, as you see, bound to represent it, and modify ourselves in line with targets. So not drinking more than 2 to 3 units a day if you're a woman, which is 2 glasses of wine. You know, taking 30 minutes of moderate exercise, not excessive exercise, because you might get a sports injury.
Then we ask how much you drink.
Moderate exercise. And you see within public service institutions a whole layer, a new bureaucratic class, which corresponds to this new role of the state. So in terms of rubbish collection, there's still a lot of working class bin men who go and pick up the rubbish and put it in the van and take it to landfill or wherever. But there's a whole new layer of many middle class women with clipboards who are there to monitor the way in which you put your rubbish out. So, you know, to get you to sort it into more and more bins. There was a recent report which found that the maximum number of bins was 9 in a UK council. And to make sure the bin lid isn't open too much, one guy got fined for leaving his bin lid open 1 inch.
No.
And making sure the bin's in the correct place. So here you see a shift from something that was quite a simple public service, getting the litter in the van, to essentially behaviour control and various forms of supervision. And a new class within councils, which is ever increasing. So over the past 5 years, the bin men have got fewer and fewer, and the clipboards have got bigger and bigger. And you know, there's that, but there's actually within every public service, and you can see it in terms of a new class. So new officials and new jobs. So you have safer travel advisor, diversity officer, safeguarding officer. Essentially all these new professions which have never existed in the history of humanity, but somehow have been found to be absolutely essential to the working of schools, hospitals, and all these institutions. So I think that's the first shift, from delivery of a public service to behaviour control and management. There's been another shift, which is a move more and more into the domain of civil society and private life, because there were always areas that the state regulated, but there were areas that it kept out of. It kept out of private life and family life, and also informal spaces, so spaces where people socialise and organise things among themselves without ever telling an official or filling in a form. And in England we've seen over the past 10 years really a very rapid colonisation of the realms of private life and civic life. And there's no part of private life that officials think they can't regulate. I was at an alcohol policy conference recently, and they were talking about a policy to stop parents leaving their beer in the garage. Because apparently teenagers get access to the beer, and drink it before they're supposed to, which is 18, apparently. But the idea that they thought they could change where people left their beer was extraordinary. You know, in terms of they didn't actually conceive of a realm outside their jurisdiction. They're talking about banning smoking in private vehicles if there is a child present. Many schools have a lunchbox policy, which describes the correct constituents of a lunchbox. No chocolates, and every local authority has its own policy, but some of them are very precise about the exact proportions that should be in this lunchbox. So I think there's no space that they don't see as suitable for regulation. And almost the more free a space was historically, the more it's been regulated. So the British pub was historically an incredibly free institution. The police, actually, it was only in extraordinary circumstances could they enter. If a policeman was to enter a pub, everyone would boo. You know, it was the landlord was the police in the pub, not the policeman. And you've seen an extraordinary regulation of the pub in terms of instructions over, you have to display signs about safe sex and salt intake. You need a license if you have a guitar player in your pub, or if you have poetry reading. This is under the Licensing Act, and it's called regulated entertainment, which involves most forms of human social activity. Even one council required a spoken word licence for poetry, and the pub concern said, but we just want a small number of people to sit and talk quietly, and why do we need a licence for that? But the council was not to be persuaded. For the first time in modern history, we're seeing regulation on forms of dress. You know, in the Middle Ages, there was regulation about how long your gown could be, and who could wear this kind of hat, and who could wear the other kind of hat. You know, we have burqa bans in France, Belgium, Catalonia, bans on hoods in UK shopping centres, bans on baggy pants in the US, many towns and bus services. I heard that Naples have banned skirts that are too short. And the mayor was asked how he knew that the skirt was too short, and he says that one glance will be enough to judge. But apparently it was to do with the revealing of underwear. But here you have regulation of dress for the first time in modern history. You know, from modern history, the city was a place where you could wear what the hell you wanted, beyond sort of basic kind of offence. But now you have all these regulations coming in. And the distinctive thing about these is that they're not directed at one section of the population. I think previous bans were very much directed against, say, the working classes or immigrants or whatever. But now bans are directed at everybody. Every group has its ban. So I've been watching the Italian mayors and some of their bans that come in, and every single group has its ban. So children are banned from climbing trees, young women from wearing their short skirts and bikinis. The mayor of Pisa wants to ban images of the Pisa Tower that represented as a phallus. And he also wants to ban aprons with David's genitalia on. Because they really come to disrepute. But what you see here is bans directed completely at every single section of the population, at social life as a whole, which is very novel historically. Finally, in terms of the spread into informal life, you see the extension of tax into informal areas of life. So not just taxing an economic transaction, but taxing social activity. I just finished a report about leafleting bans, under which people have to buy a council licence if you want to stand on a street corner and hand out leaflets. So you're not selling anything, there's no economic exchange, you're just handing a piece of paper to a person. And at that point, the council says you have to have a licence to do this. Some councils are charging £50 an hour. You know, a little town in Essex. So you need a licence to hand out leaflets, a licence to play the guitar in the pub. And what this is really about is a tax on informal social life, a tax on action. Before you act, you have to have a form, you have to pay the fee. And that is also novel historically. Because these were areas where you didn't, if there's no sale, it's not the state's business. You're just doing something in public space. But with the regulation of informal life, to act, you need to pay the fee. And the fee doesn't perform a public service. What it does is it pays for the bureaucracy to monitor the license fee. So with the leafleting license system, you thought, well, okay, if they used that to clear up streets, that would be one thing. But actually they use it to pay for people to administer the scheme and to go around and check your badges and to produce the badges. So essentially you have a semi-autonomous part of the state, which you pay a fee to be monitored, which sustains the bureaucrats to monitor you. And actually these are kind of self-financing areas of state activity, which is also very, very interesting. Just briefly, I think the cause of this is really the detachment of the state from social pressure and representing groups in society. You can see this with politicians. So in the past, politicians always represented somebody. They came from somewhere. Winston Churchill was an aristocrat. You know, to his bones, he was aristocratic. You had lots of Labour leaders in the House of Commons who were shipbuilders or miners. People represented a certain group. They came from somewhere. What you see now is politicians don't come from anywhere. You know, their main feature is their lack of distinguishing characteristics. They don't even drink or smoke. If they come from somewhere, they try and hide that. So David Cameron is actually very posh, but he tries to hide it all the time. And he talks the same way as everybody else. And essentially they defy their origins, if they have origins. So they comb their hair in the same way, and they essentially come from nowhere. And so there's this pristine political class that represents no section of society. And they all did PR, basically. None of them had professions, lawyers, doctors, shipbuilders, or whatever. So the state floats on top of society, and it becomes, in many ways, a bureaucracy for itself. What it represents is the interests of bureaucracy itself. If you look at these new bureaucrats, they're not actually out for self-enrichment, nor are they really out for building anything or doing anything in particular. What they're actually for is the principle of bureaucracy, for the principle of the form, against anything independent or spontaneous, against people just doing something and pitching up and doing something for themselves. So it's the principle of bureaucracy against spontaneity, against independence. And there's a real hostility and officiousness, a hostility towards people among the new political class, which is also very new. Public servants would always try and show how much they understood people and to represent people. And now there's this real hostility. So the state, in many ways, is a class set against society, set against civil society. I was a Marxist at university, and we talked about the class conflict between proletariat and the bourgeoisie. I think now there's a new class conflict, which is between the bureaucracy and civil society. And I think that is objective, as Marx was saying, an objective class conflict, which I think will be the main conflict for the next 10 years. Finally, a few words on how to take on this form of state, which is what I do in my day-to-day life. I think the obstacles are formidable. There is a very little sense of independence, self-sufficiency in civil society. I think the precondition of this has been the collapse of that. And if the state was to issue a license for breathing, people would go out and buy it, or some people would anyway. There's quite a lot of support for a lot of bans. Smokers support the smoking ban. Many of them want to give up, and they think this will help them. So there's a very weak sort of form of independence and subjectivity. I think for me there are two constituencies. The first is stubborn bastards, which has been very important in the history of libertarian campaigning. These are people who, coming from all walks of life, all political traditions, just for whatever reason just say no. I'm not going to fill in the form, I'm not going to go along this procedure. And I've worked with working class youth workers, very, very posh women who arrange flowers in the cathedral in Gloucester, completely different sections of society, different parties. But what unites them is a stubbornness and a sense of autonomy, and a sense of, for whatever reason, no, I'm not going to do this. And stubborn bastards are very, very important in the history of liberties in England. So people like John Lilburne in the 1600s, he basically just said no to everything. And I think that so now there are those people, and they're one constituency. The second constituency is civic interest groups. So people trying to do something that the state is stopping them from doing. So photographers who are getting prevented from taking photographs in public, fox hunters against the fox hunting ban, musicians against music licensing. And here I think you have objective constituencies of interest that are coming up against the state. The thing they want to do is the thing that the state is stopping them. I think that's a very fertile ground for freedom campaigning, because it's not something that's entirely abstract, but it's something people feel, and an obstruction that they experience in their day-to-day life. And so those are the points at which we launch campaigns. And for me, the job of a campaign is to theorise people's experiences and try and organise that into something that has more popular expression. But you start from those points about actual conflict. So just in conclusion, I think that the form of the British state has completely shifted over the past 20 years in terms of a shift from ostensibly public services to public behaviour management. The welfare state wasn't great, but at least it delivered something. And that's the case for the French aristocracy, in the 1700s or whatever. You had regimes that were completely undemocratic, but they rebuilt Paris, or they collected art. It is something. There's some remnant of that regime. I think our state is quite unusual in terms of leaving virtually no useful trace and having a purely obstructive, parasitic role, and turning towards society as a hostile force. And that, I think, creates an objective conflict, an objective class interest, which has never existed in the same way in the past. And so for me, the challenge of the next 10 years is really to find ways of making that conflict visible and vocal and real to people in their everyday lives. And that, for me, is the way that you can start to bring freedom to life in a time which is very propitious in many other ways.